And with that, I will call this meeting to order. Dr. Yarborough, would you lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance?
Yes,
Thank you.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which we stand, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. And before we move on to the rest of the agenda, I'm just going to make a couple of changes. I'm going to be moving the order to move up the president's report before public participation. And after that, I'll be making also a motion to amend the agenda to add an executive session item that was brought to me this afternoon. Again, I want to remind my colleagues to please use the raise hand function in Zoom when you'd like to speak and wait to be called on. I will get to everyone. If you've already spoken on the topic, I'll call on others who have not spoken yet and then come back around. This way everyone gets a chance to speak on the item being discussed. And again, in order to preserve everyone's right to speak, I'll ask that you only unmute yourselves when recognized by the chair, myself, and then please mute yourselves immediately after speaking. In terms of the president's report for the benefit of the board members and the public, on September 27th, we formally appointed the board as the Personnel Search Committee. The board agreed that we would need help from an outside recruiting firm to identify and recruit top candidates, facilitate a community input process on the attributes of the ideal candidate, and facilitate the application and interview process with the board. The RFP closes on November 1st, at which point the board will be reviewing the proposals submitted by the recruiting firms to determine which firm to hire. I've emailed you all board members with the potential meeting date of October 26th for the Personnel Search Committee. After I sent the email, I rethought it a little bit. I'm now thinking that it might make sense to meet the week of November 7th. That way, the RFP proposals have closed. We should have the proposals in front of us. So I'll leave it up to you. Let me know if you want to wait until after we have the proposals in front of us, or if you still want to meet on October 26th. And we can do that offline. We don't have to do this during the meeting. Just let me know in a text or in an email. If there are no questions. Okay, so I will move to amend the agenda to include executive session pursuant to Connecticut General Statutes 12006B and 1201B4 and 10 for strategy and negotiations with respect to pending claims and discussions which would result in the disclosure of attorney-client privilege communications. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Dr. Joyner. Any discussion? Okay. Seeing none, we'll vote to amend the agenda. Dr. Joyner,
Yes.
Mr.
I can't
Goldson,
hear.
Mr. Goldson. Is anyone else having a problem hearing us?
No.
Did anyone hear me?
We can hear you. It might be your speaker,
I can't
Mr.
hear you.
Goldson.
Oh, see. I can't hear anybody.
Can someone chat with him and help him? It might be he maybe doesn't have his speakers all the way up. Yeah, because we can hear him, he just can't hear us.
Mr. Goldson, check to make sure you have the correct speakers selected.
He can't hear us, Dr. White. Okay. All right, so I'll move on. Mr. Wilcox,
Yes.
Dr. Benitez,
Yes.
Dr. Yarborough,
Yes.
Mr. Cruz Bustamante,
Yes.
Ms. Roman, Ms. Roman's not in. Okay. Mayor Elicker,
Yes.
Mr. Goldson, can you hear us now?
I still can't, I still don't have any volume.
Yeah, I don't know. Dr. White, can you chat with him and see if he can figure it out? Thank you. I am a yes as well, and so that item passes. So we've added the executive session to the agenda. Okay, and now we can move on to public participation, Dr. Joyner and Dr. White.
I have the timer set. Dr. White, are you ready?
Yes, I am. Our first speaker this evening is Leslie Blateau. Ms. Blateau, you may begin.
Good evening, everyone. Before I share my public comment as president of NHFT, I'd like to put my mom hat on to recognize the team at Hill Central for all they're doing for our students in our neighborhood. The Hill Central second graders had their first ever elementary school field trip a few weeks ago. This is ever in their elementary school experience. And it's clear that opportunities to laugh, play, and make memories during the school day, but outside of school, are good for everyone. Teachers and students genuinely care about each other, and these kinds of positive relationships are needed now more than ever. And last Thursday, my goodness, talk about making memories. Hill Central organized a walkathon fundraiser that started with the entire school community in the gym getting energized by the Hill House Marching Band. And then the band led everyone in a parade down Spring Street through the hill that ended at the Truman School, where fun continued. What stood out to me was how much our neighbors enjoyed seeing the children who live and learn in the Hill, students parading with music, good spirit, and homemade pedants, were met with waves and smiles. The power of community schools is evident. And now, as union president, I am proud and relieved to report that as a result of hard work and commitment on both sides, NHFT and the Board of Ed have reached a tentative agreement, an agreement that will go a long way in helping NHPS retain our dedicated and experienced educators. We are eager to convene our members at an upcoming general membership meeting later this week and encourage them to ratify this contract. Lastly, I'd like to clarify the union's stance on the board's recent decision to institute hiring bonuses and increase the hourly wage for employees in before and after school programs, and the current follow-up proposal to withdraw both initiatives. Our union is not opposed to using grant funding to address the teacher shortage and improve wages for employees. Our concerns were about the process. We are opposed to unilateral decision-making by management when it comes to employee compensation, which is something we as a union have a right to negotiate. Both NHFT and the paras, our union siblings in Local 3429, are ready to sign an MOA to increase hourly wages for before and after school staff, teachers, and paraprofessionals. This is something that will benefit union members, the district, and most importantly, students and families who need more options for before and after school programming. NHFT is committed to the ongoing and necessary work that will help all of us meet the needs of our students and communities. Also, the community is looking forward to the return of in-person BOE meetings. Please let us know when the board plans to shift back to in-person meetings. Thank you.
Madam President, that is all the hands raised at this time.
Thank you, Dr. White and Dr. Joyner. And so we move on to the action items, the first being the approval of the board meeting minutes of October 11th. Is there a motion to approve? Accept?
Order, Madam President. We have two sets of minutes in our packages. Which one are we actually approving?
Yeah, you see that.
We have one that is 6 pages, and we have another
Yes.
one that is 3 pages. So
I do see that. Um, I think the first one lists everyone who made public comment is the difference.
Madam Chair, may I?
Seems that way. Dr. Jordan?
I believe our recording secretary has an explanation for that. I asked her to write down the name of every person that made public comment, which I think is a good idea. So that hopefully at some point we can get back to people and improve our relationships with. So she has her hand up.
Thank you, Dr. Jordan. Ms. Mason, can you clarify?
Dr. Jordan, thank you, President Rivera. I would believe that maybe one of them is the motions that was passed. Could you check the heading to see if the 3-pager was motions that were passed? And the other one was the minutes.
No, they both say Board of Education meeting minutes, October 11th.
Yep.
Via Zoom.
Yep.
The one difference I do see, and I haven't compared them both, one has the listing of the persons who spoke in public participation.
Okay, it should be a 6-pager for the
The
minutes.
6-pager?
For the
Okay,
minutes, yeah.
okay. So then it would be the 6-page that we are approving. Mr. Wilcox?
Yeah, just to clarify, it does appear that what's missing is the 3-pager is just mislabeled as the minutes and does just contain the motions, whereas the 6-pager contains everything else.
Yeah.
My suggestion is we go forward with the 6-pager, but if people are uncomfortable with that, we could move it to the next meeting.
Oh, no, that's also what Ms. Mason said, that it's the 6-pager that we should be approving. Is everyone comfortable with moving forward, or do we want to hold on until next meeting?
I'm comfortable.
All right, so it's been properly seconded, Dr. Joyner seconded. Any further discussion? Dr. Joyner?
Madam Chair, I think it's a good thing that we just have to label it properly in the next time around. We'll work that out between the meetings. But I think it's a good thing that she was able to list the people that participated, so we have a record of that, and that she could isolate the motions so we can have a record of that. We just have to agree on how it will be labeled, and we can talk about that and recommend something to the board.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Joyner. Mr. Bolton?
Madam President, I looked at both of them earlier today, and I think what's missing from the 3-pager is not just the names of the people that spoke, but also a synopsis, a very small synopsis of the discussion.
Yeah.
I don't understand why we would need 2 separate documents. I think one is more than adequate. It has everything.
Yeah.
And I would hope that we don't make it any more confusing than it is and just do one set of minutes to approve at the meetings. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Bolton. Attorney Alexiadis?
I just wanted to point out that the reason why there's a separate list of motions is because that's what's required under the Freedom of Information Act, that a list of motions be prepared and maintained on file, and then which is has a different timeline than the preparation of the minutes, which must be posted. So that's why you have 2 documents.
So the suggestion is to keep the 2 documents.
Yeah, but you don't need to approve the motion list, and the content of the motion list should be identical with the motion portion of the minutes.
Okay,
So it should not be anything different. It's just that I would expect that the recording secretary prepares the motion list first as required, and then moves on to complete the minutes.
okay. Sounds good, thank you. Okay, so no further discussion, we'll vote to approve the board meeting minutes for October 11th. Dr. Joyner?
Yes.
Dr. Yarborough?
Yes.
Mr. Bolton?
Yes.
Mr. Wilcox?
Yes.
Dr. Benitez?
Yes.
Mr. Cruz Bustamante?
Yes.
Ms. Roman? Okay, Mayor Elicker?
Yes.
Ms.
And
Ramon
yes,
says,
yes,
Ms. Ramon
yes,
says she's having a hard time with her audio, but she's a yes.
yes, I saw that. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you. And I'm a yes as well. So that motion passes. And we'll move forward to the personnel report. Dr. Tracy.
Johan, just look at your screen.
Thank you so much, Madam President. Good evening, board and members of the community. On my personal report, I just wanted to point out some promotional appointments. We have Amber Boykin, who has been working very hard in HR department, has been moved to HR generalist. Ivana Brown, school business manager. Maura Sheridan, Juanita Massey. She has taken on the position that Linda had before she became CFO. And Daniel Gregory Williams, Magnet School recruitment coordinator for the recruitment for the office. And so these are the promotional appointments along with the other appointments. This time we have 4 teachers who have signed on to work with New Haven Public Schools. And the other appointments are paraprofessionals. So we ask that the board accept the personnel report.
There a motion to accept, Mr. Wilcox?
Yes, I move that we approve the action items of the superintendent's personnel report.
For a second? Mr.
Second,
Bolton? Oh,
Sorry, did you call me?
I did. You have your hand up.
And thank you, Madam President. Just want to note for the record, it looks like we have 4 teachers who are leaving. No, 9 teachers that are leaving and 4 teachers that are coming on, 2 of those pending certification. I just like to kind of keep a running count of the difference between how many we're losing and how many we're getting on. I think that's important for us to continue to focus on that point, that we really need to not just recruit, but retain our teachers. And it's kind of disappointing that we're losing people in the middle of the year. And I like to somehow get some, I mean, I'm certain there must be some sort of exit interviews being done with these folks. I'd like to hear at some point in our future why folks are leaving. Thank you, Madam President.
Thank you, Mr. Bolton. Ms. Mason, you had your hand up, but then took it down.
Yes, I have a question. The audio was not very clear, so I did not get a second on the motion for the personal report.
That was Dr. Benitez.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Benitez, by the way. Okay, seeing no further discussion, we will vote to approve the action items of the personnel report. Mr. Wilcox,
Yes.
Dr. Joyner,
Yes.
Mr. Bolton,
Yes.
Dr. Benitez,
yes,
Dr. Yarborough,
Yes.
Ms. Roman. Mr. Cruz Bustamante,
Yes.
Mayor Elicker,
Yes.
and I'm a yes as well, and so that motion passes. Ms. Mason, still have your hand up?
No.
Okay, thank you. Dr. Joyner, discussion and possible action for the out-of-state trips.
Madam President, I'm asking the board to approve a trip by high school in the community to the AMC Noble View Outdoor Center in Russell, Massachusetts. It would take 10 students on a one-night trip focused on cultivating leadership skills and self-reliance in the outdoors. The students will stay in the AMC Lodge overnight and participate in activities during the day, including hiking, wilderness navigation, training, and other workshops offered by the WILD staff. strong focus on social emotional learning. I am motioning that the board approve that trip and would appreciate a second.
Mr. Wilcox?
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Wilcox. Any discussion? Okay, seeing none, we'll vote on approving the domestic out-of-state trip for HSC. Mr. Wilcox,
Yes.
Mr. Bolton,
Yes.
Dr. Joyner,
Yes.
Dr. Yarborough,
Yes.
Dr. Benitez,
Yes.
Mr. Cruz Bustamante,
Yes.
Ms. Roman. Okay, Mayor Elicker,
Yes.
and I am a yes as well, and so that motion passes. Dr. Tracy, discussion and
Point of Madam
possible
President.
action.
Point of order, Madam President. We have a
Mr. Bolton?
proposed process for field trip approvals. Is that something we're not going to address today?
A proposed process. I don't see that on the agenda.
It's in our packages.
Just an announcement.
Yeah,
Just
it's
letting the board know that that's going to be administrative procedure going forward for field trips.
Could I comment on this since it's in our package, Madam President?
Go ahead, Mr. Bolton.
Two things. One is I didn't understand why they had 21-22 school year information in there, since that school year is already gone and over with and in the past. So I'm not quite sure why that was added. And the second piece is it says in this process that the field trips have to be approved by the T&L committee before it comes to the full board. Committees don't approve anything. They don't have the authority to do that. They make recommendations. So I would suggest that if there's something going to come to us with a proposal for a process, that it should change committee approval to committee recommendation. Madam President, thank you.
Mr. Bolton, Dr. Joyner.
An approval by committee is not a legal vote. It's simply receiving the information and approving that it move up to the board for a legal vote. I'm happy with whatever term that everybody's comfortable with in the interest of efficiency.
Thank you, Dr. Joyner. Okay, Dr. Tracy.
Madam President, thank you. And so in discussion is a possible action regarding rescinding sign-on bonuses and rate of pay for before and after school program. As you know, last board meeting, I presented a proposal to do a sign-on bonus for the teachers, to attract teachers to work in New Haven, based on the fact that the current salary rate that we're paying, we can't possibly compete with teachers except for those who may be coming on at higher steps. We also proposed a pay rate for before and after school program, as we normally have done in summer school without any negotiations. And I know Board Member Golson had brought up the fact that we'd be negotiating with the union, to which I said no, I didn't think we needed to. And I said that based on the fact that we've done incentives for all staff across New Haven without having to go through any negotiation. We've done pay rate increase for summer school without having to go through that. So based on, and also in Article 12 of the union contract, Section 7, does permit the board to do sign-on bonuses in special areas. So based on those things, I put forward that proposal. Having said that, around Thursday of that same week, I had my regular meeting with Ms. Blateau, the union president, and it was brought to my attention that that was bargaining rights that was being violated, and also labor law practices. I mean, I listened and then I informed her that the board authorized me to do this. So I'm going to go ahead with it through text. But we have not acted on any of those. We have not paid anyone any bonuses. We have not done any pay rates since that was brought up to us. So we have not violated anything. However, I received my lawyer, the board's lawyer received a call from the union lawyer saying that they're going to file a prohibited act against New Haven Public Schools, New Haven Board of Ed, and also the superintendent for unilaterally determining wage, implementing sign-on bonuses and rate of pay for staff. Having said that, and having received this, it says we're to cease. I'm to publicly say that, as I have publicly declared. So I'm doing it publicly. That through its actions, we have undermined and circumvented negotiations presently being conducted in accordance with the acts, and that we bargained in bad faith and as much and has committed prohibited acts. They're asking that we cease and desist from making these changes, and that we cease and desist from bargaining in bad faith, that we publicly, that we cease and desist from repudiating its collective bargaining agreement with the union, and et cetera, et cetera. So based on this, that the lawyer of NHFT had filed to the state board, labor board, I'm asking the board to rescind this proposal because I do not want to be fighting with unions, and I do not want to, I've never violated union rights. So I don't want this a violation of their rights. I want the board to rescind this proposal that was sent forth.
Thank you, Dr. Tracy. Is there a motion, Dr. Joyner?
I think it's a good idea to rescind the proposal, and I'd like to make a motion to do that on the grounds that we want a really good relationship with our unions. They are partners, they're not our adversaries. And I would motion to rescind the previous pay raise in accordance with the request from the union's lawyer.
Dr. Joyner, is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Wilcox. Any discussion? Mr. Goldson?
Thank you, Madam President. I was going to avoid trying to say this at this meeting, but I'm going to. I told you so. I said at the meeting, one, you should have separated these two motions out. They should have been two separate motions. They were two different issues. Secondly, I raised the issue that to approve the bonuses for specific employee classes of employees, which involved several different unions, not just the teachers union. It involved several different unions, and we hadn't had a discussion with any of those unions. And then we found out a few days later when we got an email from our HR director that she was unfamiliar with exactly what these bonuses were and how we were going to incorporate them. She wanted more detail. So clearly, this was rushed to us without thought. We rushed passing it without a whole lot of thought. And now we're sitting here embarrassed as heck in front of all New Haveners, now trying to fix a mistake that we didn't have to make in the first place. So I have another suggestion that of course is going to probably be ignored again, but I'm going to make it anyhow, Madam President. I think first of all, the item around the before and after school pay rates affects everybody. So I can't imagine that any union would have a problem with that. So I would suggest that we vote to rescind the motion, and that we do two separate motions, that we do one motion to approve the before and after school pay rates. And the second motion would be to give the superintendent the authority to negotiate with and come to an agreement with the union on the bonuses, if they're still interested in that. And if they're within a certain parameters, cost-wise and so on, she doesn't have to come back to us for another approval. That is my suggestion. Thank you, Madam President.
Thank you, Mr. Golson, Dr. Benitez, and then Mr. Wilcox.
First, I don't think that we can do the separate thing because it's being clear to what we just heard from the superintendent that they want us to desist all of it, not just part of it. So I don't think we should take a vote of any of these items separately. I do believe, even though I hear Mr. Goldson say that, and other people have said that the bonuses do not affect everybody. I disagree. I worked in a school building. I know that when there are people missing, the rest of the union members are there working really hard. And even if they're not covering, they get some of the repercussions of having less individuals working with kids. I am sure that it is not as simple as that when they say that they don't want us to do the bonuses. I am sure of that because I know that every single teacher, para, any of our staff members want us to get these new people who can come and support them. I just wish that we can unite and really work together to support our students. I am so disappointed at all these discussions that we have about dividing us. And I'm wondering if it's at any point we will become a unionized New Haven like we were years ago when we all worked to support each other and to support children. And I know everybody's thinking about the children. I know everybody says that, but we all need to start looking at the big picture. Do I like everything that people do? No, but I want to support my team here and I want to support the teachers. I am a little bit uncomfortable with the constant lack of respect for our staff at the central office and for some of our staff in buildings. I think it has to come to a moment that we all understand that if we don't have every person that we need and we have tied their hands, then we need to stop saying that they're not doing what they have to do. We're tying their hands, so then let's stop talking about how they cannot do. They cannot do because we are not allowing them to do. And let's be clear about that. That's all I have to say about this.
Thank you, Dr. Benitez. Mr. Wilcox?
Yes, thank you very much. I do think that, if I remember correctly, I made the motion at the last meeting to pass this. And I do note that it did pass unanimously according to the minutes that we just approved. So regardless of whatever discussion led up to it, we did pass it. I'll also point out that one board member proposed an amendment to the motion to set a time limit on it, and we passed that. So if people have issues with a motion as it stands, the proper way forward is to propose an amendment to the motion and then see how it goes in that process. The motion that's on the floor now, obviously, could be amended. Part of it could be stricken out to be limited to just simply the rescinding the sign-on bonuses and keeping the rate of pay for before and after school programs. So there is a proper process that allows us to make changes to motions once they're made. They're not sacred items. They can be changed if we follow that process. I'm a little this could have been avoided if with better communication. I'm assuming good intentions all around. This has been a busy time in the district, a lot of things going on with the negotiating the contract and so on. So, but it just is a reminder to people in the process, when things are posted on a Friday, our board members, our information is publicly available. I'm certain many people have our personal phone numbers. We're happy to have conversations, as well as there's a public comment period, which was used tonight by the board president, by the teachers union president, to let us know or clarification on something that is on the agenda. So even if somebody's not getting a voice that way, there is that voice that's available. On this particular motion tonight, I'm a little confused now, because now I'm hearing, I've heard testimony from the union president clarifying their position. I'm also hearing testimony that we've received legal letter from the lawyer from the union. My suggestion is going to be is that we continue on with this motion, rescind it all, and have folks meet, come up with what the proper plan is, and bring it forward so that we can consider it and move on from there. I don't want to get in front of, I don't want to create other legal issues. I don't know what that process would be, but late afternoon additions to things or during the meeting itself, it's a little bit easier if people communicate ahead of time, ducks are in a row, and then we could move forward in an orderly fashion. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Wilcox. Mr. Golson and then Mayor Elicker.
Madam President, with all due respect to document the intention that they wanted us to cease and desist on the entire motion. They said they wanted us to cease and desist on the bonus issue. That's clear. I understand there's also been some communication between, or attempted communication between Dr. Tracy and the union about the two unions actually, about their support for the second part of that motion, which was the before and after school pay. And by the way, all due respect to Mr. Wilcox, that there was a unanimous vote on this. And when I voted, I said I did not want to vote on both of these items together, but I was going to do it because I wanted to make sure that the second part of it, the after school and before school pay, was given, particularly around for the paraprofessionals. I wanted to make sure those people that work hard and are grossly underpaid were able to get a little bit of additional funding. And that is the only reason I voted for the joint motion. So Mr. Wilcox has suggested that we should make motions to fix this. So I'm going to make an amendment to fix it. I'm going to suggest that we amend this motion to just rescind the bonus part of it and to continue on with the before and after school pay, which we've done before. And and if all of the employees in the before and after are paid equally, as opposed to the bonuses that gave some people pay and additional pay and others not. So I am making a motion to amend his motion to rescind the bonuses and to keep the before and after pay. We'll see if I get a second on that.
For a second. Okay. That motion fails. Mayor Elicker and then Dr. Tracy.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I think we're all trying to accomplish the right thing here, and I think in general we're on the same page about it. I share Mr. Wilcox's, maybe I'll frame it a little bit differently, but his point about there's a cease and desist about both items. There's a legal document, and I very much appreciate the head of the union testifying that she's in support of continuing with part of this, but not the other part. But there's a legal document that if the board agrees to move forward when there's a cease and desist based on some testimony, it seems inappropriate. We wait until the cease and desist presumably is withdrawn, And then Dr. Tracy can negotiate directly with the head of the union separately and propose something to us on a different occasion. But it doesn't seem appropriate for us to kind of make a decision based on testimony when there's this legal document out there that is still valid, even if we, if the union head decided to testify tonight. And you know, I very much understand her wanting to do that. I think it's just an appropriate venue for us to rescind this, and then the venue is for Dr. Tracy and the head of the union to negotiate that so that we address the cease and desist, and then Dr. Tracy can come back to us.
Thank you, Mayor Elicker. Let me just say really quickly, Mr. Wilcox, if for some reason I'm frozen or my internet gives out while I try to get back on, please take over the meeting. Dr. Tracy?
I was actually going to say what the mayor just said. You cannot do part and not the other part. It is one document, and from the lawyer's standpoint, is both. They address both, so we can't just separate out one part of it. There apparently was complained about both aspects of it. And I'm not embarrassed to talk about it. This may be a learning experience for me. I'm not embarrassed at all to talk about it. And if this is what we have to do, and go back and meet, if I choose to present it again, then that's what we will do. But this was my way, or my team's way of saying, let's do something. We're bleeding here. We do not have teachers. Let's see if we can attract more teachers by giving a sign-on bonus to bring them on. And of course, we use that Article 27, Article 12, Section 7 of the union contract to help to make such a decision. And we were going to stand our ground, but you know, it's not worth it. I'm not going to fight back with Ms. Blateau or the power union. I'm not up for any fighting of anything. I just want to do what's right for kids, and also make it right for teachers and power to get extra pay to service our kids. That's all my intention. There's no other intention than that.
Thank you, Dr. Tracy. Mr. Goldson?
Madam President, I'm at a little bit here. I have not received this letter, this legal document from the attorneys. Apparently, Mayor Elicker must have received it because he seems to be quoting from it. I don't know if other board members received it, but as a board member, I feel a little uncomfortable having this discussion without having all of the information in front of me. And it's a little frustrating for me to have to argue a legal point without having the actual document in front of me. But my last statement on this is going to be this. I think this is an unfair, I think this is like sour grapes. It's like, well, if you're not going to give me my bonuses, I'm not going to give you the before and after school funding. That's what it looks like to me. That's what it's going to look like to a lot of other people. And I don't want to have to come back in 2 weeks and say, I told you so again, because you're going to start hearing from those folks saying, why are you doing this? Why are you punishing us for something that you've done in the past that we've all agreed on, and we want you to do it. We want you to do now and in the future. And I think it's unfair, but again, I can't even get a second to motions that make sense. That makes sense because it made sense 2 weeks ago. You wouldn't do it 2 weeks ago, and now you won't do it now. And 2 weeks from now, we're going to be back here at this table having a long discussion about this again, after we hear from those people who are going to tell us what they want. Because they've been telling us what they want, but you weren't listening. So that's my last comment on it. I think it's unfair. I think it's sour grapes. And I guess we'll just move on. And the paraprofessionals, as usual, will be hurt and will suffer by what this board does because we don't have the whatever. All right, thank you, Madam.
Mayor Elicker, then Mr. Wilcox.
Haven't seen the cease and desist, wasn't quoting from it. I don't think there's any sour grapes here. And my sense from the comments made by the board members is that people were listening to what Ms. Bateau said. There's a process, and we should follow the appropriate steps in the process. Ms. Bateau is a woman of her word, and I know Dr. Tracy is a woman of her word, and we want to increase after-school programming with our teachers. We want to attract new teachers. We all have the same goal here. It's just understandably, as the union said, there's a process, and they think that the process wasn't followed in the best way here. We're all trying to follow the right process. Let's believe in each other.
Thank you, Mayor Oliver. Mr. Wilcox and then Ms. Lamont.
And one point I would like to make is that, I mean, the consensus of what I've been hearing is that people would like to see at least the piece for the after school, before and after school programs, the rate of pay changes. So I'm certainly hoping we see at our very next meeting, whether it's this meeting or if we have a special meeting scheduled for any other purpose, that in front of us is whatever needs to be in front of us to make that part happen. So whether or not the perceived sour grapes on the part of some, I do think that the expectation, at least of all the board members that have spoken tonight, is that that piece will come before us, and preferably at our next meeting. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Wilcox. Ms. Lamont.
Hi, everyone. I wasn't at the
Looking
last.
at the name, I'm like, what? I was looking at
Hi,
the
everyone.
name and I'm like, wait a minute.
Does it say my name?
No, it says Matt Wilcox.
Oh my God. It says my name on my end. I'm sorry, y'all know it's Mashai Roman. But I do have a few questions because I wasn't at the last meeting and I know it was regarding the teachers. My question is, why doesn't New Haven Public Schools pay as much as other districts? Is it because you don't receive the same funding as them? And then I also want to know, why does the administration make so much more than the teachers? I know they have a big responsibility, but I feel like it's a big gap between administration and teachers. So that is a question that I do have.
Thank you, Ms. Lamont. Dr. Tracy. Can anyone answer that question for Ms. Lamont? Yeah.
Uh,
Go ahead.
Oh, gosh. Ms. Roman, administrators are in a different category than teachers because they're the management of the schools. They're the ones who manage and lead the schools, and they're certified by the state of Connecticut with a different level of certification to do that work. A teacher without a certification cannot do administrative work. So it's a certification difference and preparation difference. Did that answer that part of the question? Yes, so they're two. Although administrators in the state of Connecticut are still considered broadly under the teacher category, because they're still considered teachers, but in a different category of teaching. And so they're more on the administrative side. And what was your second one?
My other question was, why does the New Haven Public Schools pay as much as other districts? Like, is it a funding issue? Do you guys not receive the same as other districts in Connecticut?
In New Haven, it has always been a funding issue, and all contracts are negotiated between the administration and the union. So whatever is out there, it has been negotiated and agreed upon by all parties involved.
Thank you, Dr. Tracy. And then Dr. Tracy, you had your hand up before I asked you to answer the questions.
Yes. So what I'm saying, here's a complaint that I have. Here's a complaint, and I'll send it to all the board members. And I'll mark up mine, but I'll have Ray send it to all the board members. Here's a complaint that we cannot separate out the items unless the union lawyer decides to have them separated. In this complaint, we are to cease and desist both. So the board cannot now go back and vote on one aspect versus the other. And that's my final answer.
Thank you, Dr. Tracy. Mr. Goldson.
Madam President, I'd like to see the complaint for myself, read it for myself, and not have it interpreted by somebody else for me. I mean, if we're making a decision about something that this board needs to vote on, we should have the information in front of us and not have it interpreted by someone else. And I'm really getting frustrated and tired of this stuff. I can read. I know how to read. Send me the document and I'll read it for myself and I can make a determination. I don't need the mayor interpreting it for me. I don't need the superintendent interpreting it for me. I don't need anybody else interpreting this document for me. I can read. And I would like to read the document for myself. And I like to read it before we have this vote, Madam President, quite frankly. But it probably is not going to make a difference. I probably would vote. I'm going to vote against this vote at this point because I want to see the paraprofessionals and the teachers and all of the other people that are working those before and after school programs get their due. So I'm going to vote no on this motion unless I see a letter that clearly states that the lawyer said we can't vote on, we can't approve either of those items, which I do not think that letter says, but I don't know because I haven't seen it. And I don't know the reason why we haven't seen it. Quite frankly, it should have been sent to us as soon as the superintendent got it. I don't understand, if we're making this decision, why are we not reading the lawyer's document? I'd like an answer to that, Madam President. Why don't we have the document in front of us right now?
Dr. Joyner?
Madam Chair, I have a document in front of me that was in our packets. It's from Dr. Tracy, and it's regarding rescinding voted proposal for before and after school programs.
Point of order, Madam President.
And sign on
Point of order,
bonus.
Madam President.
Hold on, Dr. Joyner. Mr. Bolton?
I didn't ask for the document from Dr. Tracy. I asked for the document from the attorney, Madam President.
Madam Chair, may I finish?
Yes, please. Go ahead, Dr. Joyner.
Board members, last board meeting, I presented a proposal to pay staff for before and after school programs and to give sign-in incentives to attract staff to help with our more than 80 vacancies. The relevant knowledge here, the relevant text here is the lawyer for the NHFT union has served us with a notice of violation. As a result, we have not acted on the approval of the proposal. I'm asking the board to rescind the proposal regarding the before and after school program pay rates and the sign-on bonus. This is from the Chief Executive Officer of the school district. I have never had a reason to believe that she would be dishonest. And she actually, in the first, second, third paragraph, stated that the lawyer served us, and we should vote on it. And I called the question and would like to end debate and vote on the motion at hand.
Madam President, point of order. He could want to try to end the debate because he doesn't like the debate, but he doesn't have the power to do that. No one does.
There's a call the question and that needs a second. And
Madam
so
President, I'd like to see the letter from the lawyer.
Is there a second?
My
Is
question
there?
has not been answered, Madam President.
Mr.
Madam
Bolton,
President, my question hasn't been
you're out
answered.
of order.
I'm not, my question hasn't been answered.
Mr. President.
My question has not been answered, Madam President.
It's not
Where
going to
is
be
the letter
answered
from the
until we
lawyer?
deal with the call the question. So
Where
give
is
me
the
1
letter
minute.
from the lawyer, Madam President?
Mr. Bolton, you're out of order, and if you continue, I'm gonna have
Where
to
is the
mute you.
letter from the lawyer, Madam
Okay,
President?
I'm gonna have to mute you until we deal with the call the question. Is there a second? There's a call the question on the floor. Is there a
Where is the
second?
letter, Madam President?
Okay, there's not
Where's the letter, Madam President?
there is not a second, Dr. Joyner, and so that motion fails. Thank you.
Where's the letter, Madam President? My hand is up.
Your hand is up. I am getting ready to call you, but we don't have an answer to where's your letter. Dr. Tracy has the letter. She has asked us to rescind. She has provided a document for us. There is no letter at the moment unless Dr. Tracy has it and is going to share it. I'm not sure that she has to at the moment.
Madam President, are you calling on me now? My hand is up.
No, I already called on you. I just answered your question.
You didn't answer my, I want to hear the Dr. Tracy answer my question. Why don't we have the letter? Why haven't the Chief Executive Officer given the board members a legal document that we're now voting on? Why do we not have that in front of us, Madam President? And that
Go
question
ahead,
goes
Dr.
to the
Tracy.
superintendent.
Dr. Tracy, go ahead. And then Mayor Elicker.
Let me say this. As the superintendent, I'm hearing all this. We were the ones who decided that we want to do this for our staff. We were the ones who decided that and presented it to the board. This is not something in my email inbox to be sent to the board members. I won't be able to send that to you, Mr. Golson, as you're requesting now. It was a delivered letter. And so now when my secretary comes in tomorrow, she can scan it to everybody. It's not in my inbox to just say, send it to you.
Thank you, Dr. Tracy. Mayor Elicker?
Yeah, just want to clarify, we're not voting on a legal document. We're voting to rescind the previous vote that we had. And I think that we can move on. I think everyone's made their point here. It'd be nice to move on because we have other important items on the agenda, including the teacher contract.
Thank you, Mayor Elicker. Mr. Goldson?
Madam President, I just want to make sure I understand the answer we just got from the superintendent. We have a $16.5 million budget for administration. The superintendent delivered a letter to her that she did not deliver to us because she can't find one person in that $16.5 million to scan a document in and email to us. I think that's the answer I just heard. I don't need her to confirm that unless she wants to, but apparently that's what I heard. So I don't have anything else to say on this. I made my point. I'm embarrassed that I had to make that point. I'm embarrassed that this board is willing to vote without having all of the information in front of them. But that's what we're going to do. So I'm done.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Goldson. Okay, so there's a motion on the floor to rescind the sign-on bonuses and the rate of pay for before and after school programs. It was properly seconded. Seeing no further discussion, we'll vote on that item. Dr. Joyner,
Yes.
Mr. Wilcox,
Yes.
Dr. Benitez,
Yes.
Dr. Yarborough,
Yes.
Mr. Cruz Bustamante,
Yes.
Ms. Roman, Ms. Roman,
No.
Mr. Goldson,
No.
Mayor Elicker,
Yes.
and I'm a yes as well, and so that motion passes. And we'll move on to the next item, Dr. Tracy, the school year modification.
So, thank you, Madam President. The next one was something that I have already shared with the board prior to this, that inadvertently an error was made in the calculation of the student days. From what I received, one of the PD day was inadvertently counted as a school day. Normally, we give more than the state requirement for school days. Normally, we have 182 student days, and the state requirement is 180. However, last year, we had several snow days that we also had to make up a couple snow days at the end of the school year. We also have 186 teacher days. What I have said, and I've said that to the unions about this, is that we have to make up the day per the State Board of Education. And then we will decide which of those days we're going to utilize as a makeup day. And so that's where we left it. So what I want is for the board to agree to ensuring that we make up the day for the student day per the State Board of Education.
Thank you, Dr. Tracy. Mr. Wilcox?
Yes. So the one thing I'll note is that I understand, I've read the materials, but what I'm not seeing is what the proposal is in order to add that extra day, where the day will be added, and whatever other implications there might be. So my question is, I don't know what we have to go on here in terms of what that day will be. And my understanding is that the teachers union has to be consulted and has some level of approval over the exact days on the school calendar. So my question is, are we going to have a amended school calendar brought before us maybe at the next meeting that'll kind of outline what the plan is for that day?
I'll talk to Leslie and others about that because we're the teachers union and a member of my staff that worked on the calendar. So one of the things that the state board is saying, we're to say 181 student days. I believe we can do this without any big problems to anybody. We can do this because we do have 186 teachers days and we have 182 students days. So we know we can do this. The state is saying do 181. We explained to them that we already have 182. But we know that some of those days are gonna be taken up by snow days, because we build it in just in case of snow days. So what they're saying that this year, make up the day that we lost last year. That's what they're saying, make up the day that we lost last year. When our calendar goes to June 14th at the end of the school year, I'm gonna meet with Leslie and others to see if we can add on, or we can take from another day, which we'll be working through them to see whether we can take from one of the current days that they have, or we add on an extra day at the end of the school year.
All right, well, thank you for that answer. My suggestion is that we don't have a motion and we don't pick it up tonight, and we wait until the next meeting when we have what that plan will be. We just had extensive discussion revolving around not having those discussions ahead of time. So I'm hoping, I mean, obviously people might have questions that they'd like answered, but my suggestion is that this is no motion is made or the motion is tabled until we have the specific information as to what the date is and if we're meeting our contractual obligations with the teachers union, so as to avoid any potential letters and so on from them.
Yeah, understood. And whether or not we still have to make it up.
All right, thank you.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Wilcox. Mr. Bolton?
Thank you, Madam President. My first comments kind of mirror Mr. Wilcox. I didn't see a resolution in the package to vote on, so I wasn't quite sure what we were voting on, except that there was going to be an added day. I wonder what the cost these questions could be answered for the next meeting when we're actually going to have a resolution to vote on. I'm wondering what the cost is going to be because those teachers did 180 days last year. So if you're asking them to do an extra day, how do we ask people to work for free? I mean, that's not American. That's not capitalism. That's not in the union contract. And it's certainly not something that I would be willing to do. So I'd like to know what the cost is. But that's one of the questions I have. The other question I have is, how did this happen? I mean, again, we have a $16.5 million budget, administrative cost. Who was responsible for counting the number of days that we did? I mean, how in the heck does a school system miscount the number of days that kids are in school? We have a whole committee responsible for handling this issue, and somehow something happened that I've never seen happen in the school system as long as I've been in this city. And just how did we miscount? And are we sure we're going to count right this year? If we get a couple of snow days and some other stuff happens, who's keeping track of this stuff? Again, you know, this meeting is incredible because we're dealing with these issues that seem to be, you know, that we pay a lot of people to be responsible for handling, and now we're sitting here trying to figure out how to handle it. So how did we actually, who was responsible for making sure that we actually did 180 days, and how did they drop the ball? I know I'm not going to get an answer to that, but I got to ask it anyhow. Thank you, Madam President.
Dr. Tracy?
Mr. Golson, 180 days for students, that did not happen. We had 179 days. That's what we had for students. So that did not happen. And we're not violating any contract. That is something that is easily made up. It's just an error in counting, and we're not here to blame anybody. Because if anything, the board voted on that too. Everybody then, and as a Comer School District, we're not here to lay blame at anyone. We had an error, we're correcting the error. That's all.
Thank you, Dr. Tracy. Mr. Bolton?
Madam President, yeah, we voted on it. We voted on it because our management gave it to us to vote on and told us that it was a good calendar and that it covered 180 days. So we voted on it. Yes, we did, because we followed our administration. Now, when we ask questions, we keep being told, I trust the administration. I trust the superintendent. Just vote on it. Don't argue against it. Don't ask no questions. And then we ask questions, we get shot down, and then what happens? In the middle of the next year, we told we missed a day. Now, I read the documents from the state, and our excuse to the state was that we had a teacher day that we realized later on the students didn't attend. So yes, the students only attended 179 days, but the teachers attended 180 days of school. They did their 180 days that we paid them for. So now we're going to ask them to do an extra day this year because the administration screwed up and didn't count right. How is that fair? And if that's not fair, how are we going to cover the cost of asking them to do an extra day? That is the question that is not going to be answered today. And you can sit up there and you can make faces and you can say, oh, you know, the fact is they did, their staff, the security guards, the teachers, everybody did 180 days except for the students. So my question is, how are we going to add a day without having additional costs? So, and I hope we have an answer to that before we vote on this package. I really do. I'm kind of betting we're not going to because we're supposed to trust our administration and not ask questions. But that's what I'm going to continue to do. Thank you, Madam President.
Dr. Tracy, does that conclude your discussion?
My final word would be that teachers have 186 contractual days, and I leave it there. Thank you, Madam President.
Thank you, Dr. Tracy. Finance and operations, Mr. Wilcox.
All right, thank you very much. So before I get started here, one thing is we did, I saw late in the afternoon, we had received some series of questions from one of our colleagues here on the board concerning one of the agreements. And so after a conversation with administration, we're withdrawing that agreement for tonight. We'll take it back to finance and operations and get those questions answered. Do want to just remind everybody, we love to hear comments. We love to get questions. It's a little bit easier if we get the questions on the days or prior to the Finance and Operations Committee meetings, so that we have time in the meeting to get answers to those questions, or during the week between that meeting and this one. But due to the lateness, when I was able to receive those questions after my workday, we'll be withdrawing agreement number 2, which is the Martinez Design Collective. And so with that, I'll make a motion, and that is that we approve the 2 abstracts, the remaining 3 agreements listed on the agenda.
And
Second.
that's it. Okay, so now the second with any discussion, Mr. Bolton.
Thank you, Madam President.
Oh, hold on, I meant to lower your hand. Give me 1 second. Go ahead and unmute yourself.
Thank you, Madam President. I was the board member that sent those questions about this contract. I just want to be clear, and I understand what Mr. Wilcox is saying, but the fact is, we don't get the agenda until after 5 o'clock on Friday. I had a funeral to attend on Saturday. I had some personal business in my home to deal with on Sunday. And I got up at 8 o'clock on Monday morning and started going through this agenda. And you all got my questions when I completed reviewing the agenda, looking at all the documents and sending my questions. So it's not, Mr. Wilcox didn't suggest this. But so I'm not saying that he did, but this wasn't some sort of last minute, throw a bunch of questions on the board. It was getting to those questions when I had an opportunity to do so. If folks want to, if folks want us to address questions to the board sooner, we should get the agenda sooner with that information, and I'll be happier to address it and get it to people by Friday. If I get it on Wednesday, I can get it to people by Thursday, Friday, as opposed to getting it to them on Sunday or Monday. Thank you, Madam President.
Mr. Wilcox?
Yeah, and just to clarify, I appreciate those comments. I appreciate we're all volunteers. We have, well, at least all the board members, we're volunteers. We have busy schedules. We have full-time jobs, et cetera. Understand that. And I wasn't suggesting anybody was doing anything improper. Like I started to say, we appreciate getting the questions, not only from board members, but from members of the public, going to all the members of the Finance and Operations Committee, which is myself, President Rivera, Dr. Yarbrough. And then also the reminder that the action items with all the information regarding the each item is posted for the Finance and Operations Committee meeting on the Friday before the meeting. So again, you know, I do appreciate the questions, and if anybody ever has any, please let us know.
Thank you, Mr. Wilcox. Students report.
Madam President,
Go ahead.
We need to vote.
Sorry. Go ahead. Mr. Wilcox,
Yes.
Dr. Joyner,
Yes.
Mr. Goldson,
Yes.
Dr. Benitez,
Yes.
Dr. Yarborough,
Yes.
Mr. Gustav Cruz Bustamante,
Yes.
Ms. Roman,
Yes.
Mayor Elicker,
Yes.
and I'm a yes as well. And so that item passes. Students report.
Okay. Yeah, it's been quite a meeting so far, so I feel like it'd be good to take a couple deep breaths right now. I know my heartbeat going boom, 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 boom. So, you know, but today will be a shorter student report. I just have a couple of questions for Mr. Wilcox, for Dr. Tracy, but first some updates. Ms. Shai and I planned and executed the citywide student council meeting last Friday, which was, I would say, a big success, if I do say so myself. The new structure that we implemented was very effective at creating very lively, engaging dialogue. Over the next few weeks, Ms. Shai and I will be working on putting together a student feedback report. But honestly, to keep it real with y'all, it's not anything new that we haven't already heard or faced problems with. Students still need more mental health support. And it sounds like with all of the problems in our district, we really need to find a way to mobilize and engage all volunteers, professionals, students, organizers to address our literacy problem, the mental health crisis, and any other issues that we face. Because even folks at the student council meeting are often saying they're tired of talking about this every month. They're tired of pleading for more facilities resources. They're tired of pleading for more mental health support. So wanted to give a brief overview on that, but again, the report will be coming out soon. And also reminding the board that a couple of weeks ago, we passed the climate emergency resolution. And so we need to begin thinking about that. What next steps we will be taking what next steps we will be taking to put it into place. Let's see, what other things? Oh, yes. And to members of the board and also to the public, to teachers, I just want to apologize because I also voted for the pay raises. I appreciate that Dr. Tracy, everyone again, it was all in good faith. I think it was just miscommunication. And at the end of the day, we're all human. We make mistakes. Like Mr. Wilcox said, we're all volunteers. But I would like to apologize because even I was like, maybe we should talk to the unions, but I didn't. So I'd like to apologize to the public for that. And thank you to Ms. Blatto for holding us accountable to that at the beginning of this meeting. Now, 3 questions. One, Mr. Wilcox, sorry, I didn't send this to you earlier, but is there any update on the facilities issues that were brought up a couple of weeks ago? I know you said it was going to be discussed at the next Finance and Operations Committee meeting.
May I?
Yes,
Yeah, so I believe I mentioned it was going to be at the Citywide Building and Stewardship Committee meeting that we did meet. I'll give a report later, but it might be after. I don't know if you're going to be able to be on for the whole meeting. We did talk about building issues in terms of roof issues, leak issues. The report from that meeting tends to get posted pretty quick after the meeting. I hope it's been posted for after this last meeting that happened last Thursday, I think it was, or the Thursday previous. I can't remember the exact dates, but we did have those discussions. Staff did present on what they're doing to help alleviate some of them. I don't know if anybody else wants to elaborate on that. This was specifically about, you said roof leak issues, and it was from the video that you had shown from Hill House or Cross.
Okay, thank you so much for that, Mr. Wilcox. So I'll look at that report, and I'll probably also follow up with you. My bad, that was my mistake. Citywide and Stewardship Committee. Next question, more for President Rivera. Since there have been a lot of students and teachers and leaders asking when we will return to in-person meetings, especially since kind of no other city agency is doing remote meetings, are there any plans in the near future to return in person?
So I have been kind of discussing this with some of the board members. I don't have any plans on hosting the meetings to be in person. And from what I'm hearing from the attorneys is I have the right to host the meetings either as remote or in person. The fact of the matter is that the meetings are actually more accessible now than they were when we were in person. We have individuals, assuming obviously that people have a telephone or an internet connection. But at the last meeting, we had 128 persons attend the meeting via Zoom. In 2020, when we started, we had over 400 people at one meeting. And at another meeting, we had the meeting exceed 500 persons. So it exceeded the Zoom limit. So they went to the excess, the YouTube link that we have. So they listen to the meeting that way. And so those are phenomenal numbers, far in excess of anything we had before when we were meeting in person. So the meetings via Zoom are actually more accessible to the public than we had them when we were in person. So it is my that I will continue to call the meetings to be in Zoom. Mayor Elicker, did you have a question?
Yeah, I just want to clarify. It was said that this is the only meeting that's done on Zoom, but there's many committee meetings and boards and commission meetings that are still done on Zoom.
Yeah. Thank you, Mayor Elicker. Mr. Goldson?
Thank you, Madam President. There is nothing to preclude people from attending our meetings remotely while we're having in-person meetings. So to suggest that those 500 people still can't show up while we're in a in-person meeting is a little disingenuous. I would hope that one day we come back from behind these screens and actually do what we've asked our teachers and our students and our custodians and our cafeteria workers and our paraprofessionals and our bus drivers and everybody else in this school system do, and that is face the public. So I hope one day, the person, I hope one day we get back to that and stop hiding behind these screens. Thank you, Madam President.
Dr. Yarborough?
Thank you, yes. And Mr. Cruz Bustamante, I don't know if you finished your report, but before you finish, I wanted to just publicly commend yourself, Ms. Roman, for the citywide student council meeting that you ran on last Friday. I had the opportunity to attend and listen in, and you just led well. You led well, and our students were engaged in conversation, and I really appreciate the team, the staff who brought the students, and then the students themselves for the conversations that you held. And you commented on kind of the new format. And I think that worked well also. So it's just very, I was very proud just to watch you lead and hold conversations. So thank you both for what you invest in leading students and then also bringing those communications back to the board. So I appreciate you.
Thank you so much for that, Dr. Yarborough. I really appreciate it. And I appreciate you attending. So we will have an action plan at the next meeting. Y'all are more than welcome to attend once we plan the dates. I have one final question, and that's for Dr. Tracy and the HR department. This was a question that was already asked before, but I think it needs to be asked again, especially as the teacher retention crisis continues. What plan is in place to recruit and retain new teachers other than the proposed sign-up bonuses and the usual job fairs, et cetera?
So I have Miss Lisa Mack on here. She could speak to that. We just hired as you know, we just hired someone to be a recruiter in the HR department, because the one we had has since accepted a promotion in another district. To be honest with you, apart from, we believe that the sign-on bonus would be a way of attracting people, because in large part of it is other districts are offering teachers more pay than what they're currently getting in New Haven. So if a young teacher see that he or she's going to get 20,000, 12,000 more in neighboring districts, I mean, I can't blame them for going there for that, because inflation has gone up big time. So with that said, I know Ms. Mack is planning a fair to capture those who are graduating in December from the universities around. And so that's one of the push we wanted, to be able to offer them something that to entice them to come into New Haven Public Schools. Outside of that is word of mouth, talking to people. I've since reached out to some folks in some other country that I know who sent to me through WhatsApp that teachers are willing to come, but I think that would have to go through some processes with the state. I think it's called a J1 visa, if I'm not mistaken. If they're coming outside of the contiguous United States or outside of United States, they'll have to have a working visa and then go through all that process with the state. So we're looking into some things like that right now. Lisa, do you have anything to add?
I'm sorry, I had to step away for the restroom, so I didn't hear the question. I didn't hear the original question.
Talk about plans for recruitment and retention.
Okay, so yeah, so we are developing our robust recruitment plan. As Dr. Tracy did mention, we just recently, within like less than about a month ago, a little over a month now, hired a coordinator recruitment and retention, and she's working on, as along with the team, been meeting with different stakeholders and building leaders to develop a recruitment plan that encompasses everyone in district, building leaders, other staff members as well. We've met with the Youth and Family Community Engagement Department and developing discussion over a recruitment plan that would require us to travel. I will be remiss if I didn't mention that we know Daniel D has been working with other school districts, and he has done some recruitment on his personal time. And so we've been collaborating with him as well. And so we are having discussion on many different areas and how we can recruit and retain. I know we're not looking at the sign-in bonus right now, but that was an option that we were going to start posting on our advertising. We're going to be posting on other platforms such as LinkedIn. Of course, we have our current platform, Recruitment and Hiring, which is Apple Track Frontline Education. And so once we start with our other senior personnel analyst who has transferred over from the city of New Haven, which we're very excited about that, we're just developing a more robust plan that will encompass different areas and targeted. We're going to have we also work with choice and enrollment in the first floor to do some marketing. So we have to kind of increase our marketing to get out to all the other different areas that we have not reached out to, because it's not just about our platform or our hiring, it's about getting the word out to getting candidates interested in teaching again. So we're trying different platforms, and we're going in different angles of what we've done in the past. We've always done CT Week. We always do our current platform, Frontline Education. We're just trying to come up with some other programs. But we're going to be presenting our recruitment and retention goals in the coming week, within the next couple of days. So we certainly will be happy to present to the board if you would have us, and can hear more detailed as to what we plan on doing for the upcoming recruitment season that we're in right now.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Okay.
Oh, no.
Having said that, Mr. Bustamante, and we are also open for ideas from folks, because I think recruitment is everybody's responsibility. As someone said in one of the board meetings, not just HR, it's not just central office, it's everybody's responsibility. We know we bear the burden of doing so, but I'm sure that word of mouth going around to people. Now, remember when Dr. Joyner when I used to be a principal, he would bring people from Sacred Heart University. Was it no St. Joseph or one of those universities?
Sacred Heart.
Sacred Heart, and you know, tell us that we have these people in this class, and we would go jump right ahead and employ them in New Haven Public Schools. I think the state is also looking at what can they do. Right now, they're trying to pay for students some exams, teacher-student exams, to take that burden away from them, from paying to pass a test. I mean, of course, you've heard me go on the record and say passing a test doesn't mean I'm a great teacher or can make me a great teacher. But the state is refunding or giving monies to Southern Connecticut State University and other places to pay for these students to take their test, because that had been an obstacle for a lot of students. It's a lot of money to pass or to take those tests. And if you don't pass it, you have to pay the same amount of money again. So those were obstacles. So the state is working with us and looking at varied options. It is difficult across the state of Connecticut, I mean, especially in the urban school districts. I thought we were in bad shape, but there are others in worse shape than New Haven Public Schools as it is right now. And so the urban centers, I think we have been hit the worst in terms of the teacher shortage that we are experiencing. And we're trying our best, to be honest with you. And he says only the best is good enough. We're trying our best.
Really appreciate that. As part of a suggestion, I'm not going to get on my soapbox today, I promise y'all, but
it's okay.
May 2022, we had a walkout of 700 students. And it's time, I think it's time to start thinking of bigger, more radical solutions. And that also means talking with the city's constituents and seeing where we can reallocate funds on the city level. There have been demands to reallocate funds from the police department to remove police officers from schools and get them to the education department. And we're seeing increased demands that students are making for increased mental health supports. And while there are mental health supports in these schools, they're not rigorous, they're not up to scale, they're not enough. So I think that's something that's going to involve Mashai and I organizing a lot of students and coming up with a plan. But if we can't pay well, we at least need to uphold and respect the teachers' unions and create good working conditions for these professionals to work in and good learning conditions for students to learn in. So I think it's time to start thinking outside the box as well. But that is all for me. For my student report, I think Mashai has something as well. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Mr. Cruz Bustamante. Ms. Roman?
Hi, everyone. Okay. So the first thing I want to talk about is what is the protocol when a New Haven Public School staff member does not comply with a student's 504 plan IEP, or students with special education that have plans stating they have special accommodations in school? Is this a school issue? If so, what happens when it's out of the school's hands? That's the first thing I have a question about.
So we have an executive director of special ed student services. Ms. Tiffany Jackson, who any reports of such things go to her and her team. And they usually work with the schools or work with parents. I've seen them working a lot with parents, where, parents reaching out to them, but they won't know that these things are not happening unless somebody really say it's not happening. So as soon as it's told to them, I've seen them personally reaching out, working with parents, working with the schools to make sure we're in compliance, because by law, we have to be in compliance.
Okay, thank you. And then the next thing I want to talk about is, does New Haven Public Schools have mental health resources for their staff members? I understand that you have them for the students. I know I come into meetings and I talk a lot about mental health because I'm big on mental health, but do you have resources for your staff members? And I hear that we have a lot of resources in New Haven Public Schools, even though I asked for way more. I know that we have some, but how are we promoting the resources that we do have? Are you depending that on the school, or is that a district thing as far as promoting the resources that we do have?
So both ends. One of the things where we're hoping that the schools will be able to, at least from the student point of view, clearly indicate what is at their schools, because we do have social workers, we do have psychologists, we do have counselors in these schools, and we do have Clifford Bears working in many of our schools, along with, what they call this guy, what's his name? Alive, the Alive program and other things in the school. We also have Comer in the schools. So they're, but it's a matter of how it is articulated. And so if that's something that I will do to make sure that the schools are sharing with the students what's available to them in terms of resources. And I'm not saying it is 100% perfect, but there are resources. When it comes for teachers, we have what is called a structure that's called SSST, or Triple ST, Student Staff Support Team. We're working with the Comer program to make sure those things are revisited as one of the structures to support students, staff, and to support students and staff in the school. And of course, we have outside agencies too that our staff are referred to, they need mental health support. We have outside agencies to which the staff members are referred.
Okay. The next thing I want to address, and when I address this last topic, I don't mean any disrespect when I come off when I say this, but I do hear this from a lot of students, a lot of parents, a lot of staff members in New Haven Public Schools who come to the meetings, and they talk about the different topics and address their concerns. A lot of them feel like this board shows no sympathy. And I know that we're not allowed to respond to public comment, which is understandable. I understand that part, but a lot of them complain about the facial expressions that board members are making, and they feel like every time they address their concerns, it's like they're annoying everyone when they say those things. And I'm very upset about that, because no one should ever feel like their concerns are not valued. I feel like as a board, everyone values everyone's concerns, but when people come in these meetings and they talk about how they feel, it's just like they're annoying this board. And I know you guys are probably thinking I'm not making a facial expression on purpose, but it's something that's happening repeatedly. It's continuously happening. And so many staff members, parents, and students are upset because they're at a point where they don't even want to come in the meeting and address anything anymore. And once again, I'm not trying to come off as disrespectful. This is just what I receive as the student rep. Many people come to me about their concerns. So one thing I would suggest is, I don't know, you don't have to necessarily speak, because I know we're not allowed to respond to public comment, but I don't know. I just feel like the facial expressions sometimes are just not needed, and I don't know if they're intentional. And that's the last thing in my student report.
Thank you, Ms. Hamon. Mr. Goldson?
Thank you, Madam President. Thank you, Madam President. I'd like to thank our two students, Ms. Ramon and Mr. Cruz Bustamante, for their always insightful reports to this board. I particularly am impressed with their level of support for the employees of the organization, particularly the teachers. I hope that we follow their lead in some of these issues. I would would ask them one question, and this, I had a call from a person today who did a workshop in the schools, in a middle school, for one of our, and Dr. Tracy, this is for you too, for one of our schools. And this person who volunteered to come in and do this workshop was actually called a BITCH by a student. And when she asked the student to leave the room, she thought the student was going to go to the office. The student came back with a parent representative in the school, and they stood in the corner and mocked the person the entire time she was giving her workshop. And this was the second school she had been in, and the other one was a middle school also. And she said that she couldn't see the National Guard going into these schools and maintaining order. That's how bad it was. And we've been hearing over and over again about the lack of order in some of these schools. Dr. Joyner raises the issues all the time about the lack of order in these schools. And we heard our last meeting that one of our high schools was literally shut down because of a riot type atmosphere that occurred in that school that day. So if you could help us, if you could put this on top of your your list of items to address, and help us figure out how to address these issues of discipline in the school, that would be helpful, because I'm hearing this all of the time. This person called me out of the blue. I haven't heard from this person in years. And this person called me out of the blue today and said, I have to talk to you about this. And wanted to know who she could talk to in the school system to help her figure out how she could be helpful, because she wants to be helpful. The public out there wants to help us figure out how to make our schools better. So if you guys can help us figure out how pervasive these disciplinary issues are and how to address them, I would highly appreciate it. Just one other sub point. We did have a report a couple of months ago about discipline in the schools. The report was not complete. It was missing some schools. But what it did point out to me, which was concerning, was that there were some schools that had with the in-school suspension, and there were other schools that did not. I did ask at that meeting if we could get a report on why that was occurring. We never did. It seems like, besides, we blame everything on COVID, but I know these things were happening before COVID. I remember hearing about one principal that was taken out on a stretcher because it had gotten so chaotic in her school. Again, in the middle school, particularly with the girls in the school, it got so chaotic that she kind of lost it there for a moment. So I would physically lost it there for a moment. So I would like for if you guys would be willing to kind of put that on your, I think that goes hand in hand with the counseling piece that you guys have been raising every meeting. And I am 100% supportive behind whatever you come back to us with. Thank you very much, Madam President.
Thank you, Mr. Bolton. Mr. Cruz Bustamante.
For sure. Thank you so much for bringing up those concerns. And just as a statement to the public, board members, people who are hesitant about what we're saying, I completely understand that. And yeah, there are some people who are going to slip through the cracks. And I know how that feels like. I've been personally harassed by students at school who harass for no other reason than to just cause trouble, right? I was at Wilbur Cross where that riot took place, and I don't have the answers to that. I do believe that students need to take personal responsibility for the actions that they cause, but what I do know is that continuing to engage in punitive carceral punishments is not going to work, because we've been trying it for how long and it still hasn't worked. And so I would say, a lot of people, when they hear of restorative justice initiatives and practices, they equate that to permissiveness, and that is not what that is. We are trying to advocate for and create a space and a community, not a community as in an ideal, but something that you are actually a part of and that you can easily recognize when you step into school, trying to create a community where it's implausible to think of causing harm, because you know that if you say something wrong or if you do something to harm another person, you'll be held accountable to that, because people know you and people know that that's not acceptable. As a personal anecdote, I've always felt the safest in my English classes, for example, this year and last year, where the teachers took extra time to create that community within this, like between students, right? Where there's that easier, it kind of allows that space for people to dialogue with each other. And in the places where I don't feel safe, those are the places where nobody knows each other. Nobody cares for one another. But I do sympathize with teachers and people who go through that. I really do. I'm not dismissing their concerns, they're real concerns, but we can't resort to more punitive and carceral punishments. And yeah, I don't have all the answers. I don't know, but we will talk about that, and we will work with students, parents, teachers, professionals, psychologists, everybody, to see what kind of solution we could come up with, because we don't have all the answers.
Thank you, Mr. Cruz Bustamante. Dr. Tracy?
Thank you, Mr. Bustamante, for sharing, and from Mashai for sharing what's happening on the school ground. But I also need to say, we have 41 schools, and if there's something happening in a few schools, it's not across the board. We ought to be careful of presenting it like it's across the board. There's some schools where there are issues, and we know those schools where there are issues, and we've put in whatever necessary supports in those schools. Like, for example, you mentioned Cross. Cross has over 1,600 students. Their capacity is a certain amount, and we have to stop sending students, registering students to Wilbercross because of the sheer number of students that they have there. We know we have the issues, and I would not have called that what happened there last week as a riot. There were 6 fights that broke out during transition and lunch period that we had to call in the authorities to help settle the building. And we did a lockdown to help settle the building to prevent more fights, because, you know, when students see a fight, they rush to a fight, and then one thing leads to the other. And so we tried to address that. And I was at the school, and some of my team members were at the school, you know, to ensure that there's safety of students. So we locked down the schools to make sure that their students are safe. But I hear you loud and clear that there has to be a lot more done. I served at Jackie Robinson Middle School in the 90s. And if I were to tell you then, for me, that was the worst school ever, that I wanted to quit teaching because of what I had to deal with. But eventually, as I built relationship with the kids, things settled down. But still, it was a place that was a very tough place to work back in the early 90s. There are schools that are similar to that. One of the reasons why our former Dr. Mayo got rid of the middle school model was because of that. There were too many in one place, creating a lot of mayhem across the system. So going to a K-8 model, the hope was that it becomes a more family atmosphere where the older children would help take care of the younger children, that type of model. Well, we're finding out too that there are issues with also that model, because the middle schoolers are, you know, in some places creating a lot of problem too in their space. And that's part of their growing up. But being rude and disrespectful, for me, should not be tolerated by anyone. And when it's reported, it should be dealt with. At the same time, there's so many in some places that you can't really get rid of the whole school in dealing with it. And some students are dysregulated, very, very dysregulated, that we have to deal with. And so in some of those schools, principals are working, teachers are working very hard. And sometimes what I see, when I go around to the schools, to be honest with you, maybe because of the length of time, I'm not seeing that. School seems settled as I go around to the school, and I've been around to all 41 schools, and I'm in my second going around where I'm spending more time on the premises of the schools and going into classrooms. So the problems are real, they're there. And so all of us have to come together, see what can we do in terms of a village to help save our children and to support our teachers. Because teachers cannot teach disrespectful children, and disrespectful children will not learn. And so it's a whole effort with parents, teachers, paraprofessionals, everybody in the building. And as you say, Mr. Bustamante, building relationship with those students, supporting staff in the whole process. That's what our game plan is. Is it going to happen overnight? No, because after the pandemic, we see more dysregulation than we have ever seen before. This year is a little quieter than last year, though, in most places. So I want to thank you for your advocacy and bringing those things to our attention. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Dr. Tracy. Oh, where did Mr. Wilson go? Oh.
Madam President, I put my hand back down. I just
That's why you were on the left side of my screen and then you were gone.
I just didn't want to comment on this anymore. I put my hand back down.
All right, thank you, Mr. Wilson. Teaching and learning report, Dr. Joyner.
I'm going to allow myself 3 minutes for this report, and I will stop when those 3 minutes are up, and I'm starting now. I've been listening to a lot that's been said tonight, and Dr. Benitez and I talk at least once or twice a week about teaching and learning, because we're trying to really get the ship pointed in that direction, because that really is the essential purpose of schools. And I just like to make some observation and then tell you about the agenda for our meeting on Wednesday. First of all, there are no simple solutions for complex problems. We ought to understand that. The second point I want to make is that a little learning is a dangerous thing. That was an essay written by Alexander Pope called An Essay on Criticism. And we often make pronouncements and draw conclusions without having a broad understanding of the issue. And as board members, it's our responsibility, whether we're students or adults, to learn as much about an issue that we can learn so that we can be in a position to make good decisions for the district. The third comment I want to make, and it all relates to teaching and learning, is that schools cannot be all things to all people. We simply cannot be. And some of the things that we're asked to do, we simply don't have the resources to do. And we certainly can't be held responsible for stuff that people are asking us to do with kids that are not even done in their own homes by their parents or guardians. The fourth thing is that if we're going to really get at teaching and learning, we need more clarity about the scope and focus of our meetings, because we need to be more efficient. We need to allocate time where time is necessary. And we need to have a lot more respect for one another. And as a number of members have said, we need to assume people's best intentions. I'm volunteering to do this. I could do other things with my life, but I love my profession. I love my community, and I will do as much as I can for as long as I breathe to help my community. I'd like to say that the board president has done a phenomenal job. She works full time. She has a really challenging job trying to provide housing for people. And her leadership of the board actually allows us to focus on teaching.
Point of order, Madam President.
Hold on, Dr. Joyner. Mr. Bolton.
Madam President, how are these comments related to the Teaching and Learning Committee and the items that they're dealing with?
I didn't do anything that you didn't just do with the students.
Madam President, he's out of order, Madam President.
I have not called him out of order.
Or is he?
Madam President, I can answer that question if you want to answer.
Or is he going to
everything that we
lecture
say
us
and do
on
in these meetings?
What he thinks we should be doing in these meetings?
Everything that we do and say in these meetings have an impact on how students perceive school and the people that lead schools. Every single thing. There's nothing that goes on in this community that does not creep into the mind of a child trying to learn something. The murders, the burglaries, the poverty, all of it affects teaching and learning. And our examples. So that's why
President, point of order, is it an item on the teaching and learning agenda? Madam
it
President?
doesn't have to be an item, it's a report. The report
It's
is
his
the item.
report, Mr. Bolton. It's
Right.
going to continue.
And actually, this interaction is troublesome because hopefully our classrooms will be orderly and people can do what they need to do in order to make sure that kids learn and teachers can teach.
Madam President,
Now,
point of order.
Mr.
Dr.
Bolton,
Joyner's
you're
not my
up.
teacher anymore. He's
I
my fellow
was-
board member. He doesn't need a
I was
lecture. me
never your
about board
teacher,
rules.
Mr. Golson.
You're out of order, Mr. Bolton. Come on.
Thank you. So anyway, what Dr. Benitez and I are trying to do, we're trying to make sure we create policy that finds its way into the classroom and that what goes on in the classroom finds its way back up to policy so that there's that cyclical relationship. There's no point in us creating policy if it doesn't translate into effective practice in the classroom. And effective practice in the classroom has to have a policy blanket around it to protect it. And the last thing I'll say is that we have phenomenal leadership in all our unions now. They want the same things that we want. We need a fresh start and we need to come together around the needs of kids in classrooms so that they can read better, write better, think better, and have better character. Thank you very much, Madam President, and thank you, board, for listening.
Thank you, Dr. Joyner. You're still on for facilities unless there are questions. Last teaching and learning report. Can you hear me? I think I was frozen for a little.
Yeah, I can hear you. I finished. We're gonna have a meeting on Wednesday. I would invite everybody to come so that they can see what we're trying to do to improve the students' ability to learn and teachers' capacity to teach.
Okay. Thank you, Dr. Joyner. And
Point of order, Madam
facilities naming committee report.
Point of order.
Yes,
Madam
that report.
Mr.
Point of order,
Bolton.
Madam President.
Mr. Bolton.
Dr. Joyner mentioned that he was going to have his meeting on Wednesday. I think I remember you scheduling a special meeting on Wednesday also. Is that correct? Are those two conflicting?
I mentioned in my, and you probably didn't hear it in my president's report because you were having problem with your audio.
Okay.
I did ask to schedule that. It hasn't been scheduled yet. However, the RFP proposal request, I think it expires on November 1st. And so after I sent over that meeting, I was thinking maybe we want to wait until the week of the 7th so that we have the proposals in front of us and we can actually look at them and discuss them and make some decisions on the proposals. But I'll leave that up to you all to let me know if you prefer to meet the week of November 7th or if you want to meet on the 26th. But I did not realize Dr. Joyner's meeting was on Wednesday, the 26th. So. Did you hear me or no? Okay, I wasn't sure. My internet is kind of spotty. Okay, please proceed, Dr. Joyner.
Madam President, I think last year we, before we wrote the naming policy, we had actually gotten a recommendation to name the foyer at Hill House after Dr. Lonnie Garris, who served there as 20 years, made a lot of changes in the school, and the library after Mr. Polishin, who was a phenomenal teacher that passed away suddenly. And so people from those families have contacted me. Our current policy would not allow that because the policy says that a person has to be deceased. And so the people have asked, could we either amend the policy or create a policy where you can name a portion of a building after a person based on meritorious service. And so we're gonna send that to governance and look at it and then bring back a recommendation to the board when it's appropriate.
Okay, great. I think the issue was when we were amending or revising that policy, and anyone can refresh my memory if I have it wrong. we were going through the renaming of the Columbus School, and so I think everybody just wanted to tighten up the policy
Right.
to make sure that it was done, correctly, or however you want to frame it.
Right.
But I don't think we were thinking about portions of the school. I think it was just the school at large.
Actually, it was. But when we finally wrote the policy, it says portions of it. And that's what created a problem for those previous nominations. So we would have to make some amendments and bring it back to the board for either voting up or down.
Okay, good.
And hopefully we can do that.
Sounds good. Does that conclude your report? Dr.
Yes, it
Joyner?
does. Yes, it does.
Mr. Bolton?
Thank you, Madam President. Dr. Joyner was the author of that policy. And, we keep changing these policies to make it convenient for somebody else. And, Dr. Garris is a hero of mine. And I certainly think that we should find a way to honor him. But we shouldn't be changing or amending the policy for one person. And by the way, I voted against I was not supportive of that policy change because I thought that we should be able to name some of these people that could still that would still be alive and could appreciate it. But I was in the minority, and I lost that argument. And I'm more than willing to be supportive of changing the policy, but we're going to change that to every couple of years because one person wants to change it. I mean, I just think it's unfair. And we just got a big lecture about how we should be changing, how we should be following our policies and incorporating our policies and everything we do, and then we change it whenever it becomes convenient. So I'm a little uncomfortable with going back and forth, changing it whenever one person decides that it's not convenient for them at the moment. And I hope that we have a very robust discussion on that before we again change that policy. Thank you, Madam.
Mr. Wilcox?
Yeah. So just as a point of information, as a reminder, I mean, the policy did go from facilities naming, it goes to governance. The chair of the governance at the time was not Dr. Joyner. It was a previous board member. Policies are made to be looked at, and if we need to change them, fine. No one members can change a policy. Policies are looked at the committee level. They go to the governance committee, and then the governance committee decides if it comes to the board, and then a majority of the board members decides if the policy's changed. So I don't think we need to denigrate our policy that we have, our process that we have in place. I think we just let the process run forward. And I would hope as a board, if we find that a policy isn't meeting the needs, that we would take a look at it. We would use that process to be able to decide what it would take to fix it. So I'm happy to hear that the facilities naming group is going to take a look at this and that it'll go to the governance and it'll come here. And I do hope we have that robust discussion at that time. But I think it's disingenuous to say that one person is going to make that change. It'll have to be majority of the board that decides to make that change. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Wilcox. Dr. Joyner?
Madam Chair, I really think this is a teachable moment, particularly when we look at what's going on now with the Supreme Court. There's a strict constructionist argument that says that things should be interpreted exactly as they're written. And then there's another school of thought that says that any document created by human beings is a living document that should reflect the times that it is in, and it should be examined on a regular basis to see whether or not it's covering intended purposes. And I think the moral issue is that we should always do what's in the best interest of the common will, the common good. And it's a good opportunity for the students here to understand that human beings create laws and policies, and human beings can also recreate laws and policies. In 1896, separate but equal was the law of the land. By 1954, it was considered unconstitutional. It was inhumane even then. So it's a teachable moment that as human beings, we can craft solutions to problems, and we can recraft solutions if those solutions that we craft don't reach intended purposes. But it is complicated and complex. And I don't take it personally, some of the criticism, but I think I stand on solid ethical and legal ground in terms of precedents regarding changing policies, laws, and what have you. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Joyner. Mr. Goldson?
Madam President, if Dr. Joyner took it personally, or if someone took it as a personal shot at Dr. Joyner, it wasn't. I mean, I'm just pointing out the facts. I have receipts. I don't say this stuff willy-nilly just to be saying it. I mean, I have receipts. Dr. Joyner was the author of that policy. It was his recommendation. He was co-chair of that committee, the governance committee. It wasn't just the other board member. He was the co-chair of the committee. He wrote the policy, and now he's asking us to change the policy that he wrote. And that's fine. I'm more than willing to do that because I supported the original policy in the first place. So I don't have a problem going back there. This is a teachable moment. We should be revising history. We should be telling history the way it is, and that's what I'm doing right now. And I have the receipts for it. So if anybody has any questions about it, or if they want to question my memory of my memory's gotten a little bad now because of this chemo, but there's some things I don't forget, and those are fights that I lose. I got a lot of those, so I don't forget those, and I didn't forget that fight. So I'm more than willing to go back to the old policy, which was honoring folks who are still alive and can appreciate the honors. And I hope we move in haste to do that. Thank you, Madam President.
Mayor Elicker?
It's 7:37. We're on item 7, and there are 17 items on the agenda. It would be good if board members, as much as possible, could be brief so we can keep moving here.
Thank you, Mayor Elicker. Superintendent's report, Dr. Tracy?
Much, Madam President. Just to bring the update to the board. As you know, there is a legislative act in the state of Connecticut to teach, for all school systems, to teach the science of reading. Now, what is the science of reading? It's just a body of research that incorporates insights and research from disciplines that include developmental psychology, educational psychology, cognitive science, and cognitive neuroscience. It's based on the fact that there are demonstrated methods that can best help children to learn to read from the earliest stages in spoken language to being able to successfully decode unfamiliar words. Having said that, because there's a legislative act that was put in place where all school systems should start by July 2023, to start incorporating in the teaching methods elements of the science of reading. And we have explained what the elements are, such as fluency, comprehension, vocabulary, et cetera, Having said that, as a result of that legislative act, the State Board of Education, they have reviewed several K-3 programs, reading programs that espouse elements of the science of reading. So they came up with 6 comprehensive reading programs that school districts can select from. That was released 2 weeks ago to school systems. These comprehensive programs, thanks to Ms. Hannons and Ms. Brantley, they have invited these vendors who are the authors of these 6 programs that were given to us by the state 2 weeks ago. We invited those vendors in to share their programs and to share the great parts and the not so great parts of their programs. We had a team of people sitting down and listening to them. They're also coming back. Ms. Hannons will be inviting them back to have some kind of fair that other people can go in and ask questions and see what they have to offer before we make a selection as New Haven Public Schools. There's also that element where we can also ask for they said a waiver, or we can ask for a year extension. Now, what we have done this year, we're using the time to train teachers in these elements. We have training programs going on right now. We have a whole calendar of professional development in which we're training teachers in these elements of reading. Not to say they've not been trained before, but we're being more focused and more intentional on those things. So the state has also asked, we went to a convening, they asked that we participate in what is called a master's class. So that will be administrators, central administrators, those who are overseeing schools, etc., participate in an author's class. They've asked for us to develop a district literacy team. We had one before, but now for this purpose, we're having one, the district literacy team, and we'll be involved in this master's class. They have had one cohort, and this is the second cohort we're invited. So we will know by next week or so whether or not New Haven is selected to be in that master's class. We have given the names of folks who we think should be on that literacy leadership team. And that's where we are right now. So again, we're moving forward with the programs that were suggested 2 weeks ago. And we're trying to see which one would be probably the best fit. Of course, getting other people's ideas, we have to select one. But as to which one, that's where we have that flexibility, which ones we want to select, which one we want to select from those 6 programs. So that's my update. Ms. Hannans will be doing some more work with staff and community as she continues to present our literacy plan that we have and all the different aspects of that literacy plan that's incorporating the science of reading.
Thank you, Dr. Tracy. Mayor Elicker?
Thanks, Dr. Tracy, for the presentation. So just to clarify, you're not going to be seeking a waiver, correct?
We're thinking right now that we won't seek the waiver. We just need to train the teachers. That's what we're trying to do, get the teachers trained so that by July 2023, we are full scale ahead in implementation as the Act says.
Excellent. If there's things, I was speaking for myself, but if there's things that I can do or we can do to help support you in that effort so we can avoid considering a waiver, please let me know. Okay. And also, if at all possible, to include, if it's appropriate, when they do the presentations or this fair where people can ask questions, it might be nice for the board members to listen in if that's appropriate and possible for these organizations.
They come in person, so they were here in person. It's not a Zoom. They came in person, physically in person, and met with us in the old boardroom. The state is also having, the State Department of Education will be meeting with New Haven Public School. They're supporting schools. They'll be meeting with New Haven Public Schools October 31st. They're coming here from 1 to 3:30. And I invited the executive board, the president, the vice president, and the secretary of the board. We want to avoid having like a full-blown board meeting. So this is the group that they wanted to be there. And so we're having that meeting with them, with my executive team. So okay. They have a lot of things they want to share with us. And so we're going to be listening to what they have, how they're going to support New Haven Public School. Their whole idea is for support. The Commissioner of Education will also be there.
Well, I'd certainly be interested in learning more. Yes. Thanks.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Dr. Tracy. Does that conclude your report? Oh, Mr. Wilcox?
I think that concludes my report.
Mr. Wilcox?
I just had a quick question, and that was if the training calendar is going to be, what the schedule for that training, or if that's going to be available. And it's simply because I sometimes am getting things where people say nothing's happening or nobody's doing anything, when I understand that things are being scheduled and that there are some limitations in terms of when the days are when in-service days can happen in the training. So is that information available or
yeah, we will
share appropriately with affected groups?
We'll have Ms. Johnson, Edith Johnson, who is in charge of professional development. She'll be sharing with the board and with the teaching and learning the whole entire professional development calendar. Now, one thing we need to note that because these things are happening after school. So currently we're paying teachers to come to these training sessions. Last year we had over 300 or so teachers going into training. We call them our academies of learning or learning academies. So although we're putting it out there, we can't really force anyone to be a part of the training, but we're making the training available, if that makes any sense. We're
Okay.
making it available for staff, yes.
All right. Well, I'm sure if Ms. Johnson's on it, things will definitely be progressing. And yeah, so clarification as to the voluntary trainings versus any particularly mandatory ones, that'd be great. Thank you very much. I appreciate that.
Thank you, Mr. Wilcox and Dr. Tracy. Okay, so no other questions. We'll move on to the Head Start report, Mr. Wilcox.
Thank you very much. I have good Head Start news, and that is we met as the Head Start subcommittee met last Thursday, and we are up to, looking at my notes here, 74% enrollment, 399 students, with another 49 that are pending the health review, where they have to review the health files, and people have to get those things in order, which is good news, and it's higher than we've been throughout COVID and getting back to more normal levels. We have 132 vacancies still that staff are working hard to get filled. Hopefully all the 49 will join into that. Most of the vacancies are at the Mayo School, but there are several at other locations such as Lincoln Bassett. I think all of our locations, except maybe one, has at least one opening, and staff would love to hear from people. Other things that are going on related to this, they're working with facilities on playground improvements on some of our playgrounds. So it's a benefit of having the Head Start is that that funding can be used to work on playgrounds that will of course be able to be used by all the students at the school. And then finally, as you all know, that in addition to the governance committee, which is what we are in the Head Start parlance, there's the Policy Council, which is the mandatory parents group, and I believe they're having their first meeting this week. And so staff, in the process of signing up the students, was working hard to be able to have a robust Policy Council group. So some good news on the Head Start front, but still we need to get back up to full enrollment, but we're closer than we've been. Happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Wilcox.
All right.
School building committee report.
Just as was previously mentioned in the meeting, we did meet last week. In addition to the standard report of going through various capital projects and so on, we did get an update that I'm looking at my notes here, environmental site surveys was being scheduled for the adult ed space or future adult ed space on Bassett Street. They were going through with the site surveys to double check anything in the building or outside the building in terms of that. I know that was a concern of some members of the public and some members of the board, and it was reported that those things are progressing and getting scheduled so that we get that information.
Any questions or comments? Finance and operations.
And for finance and operations, we already talked about the action items, but I did want to mention two things in particular. The minutes are in your board packets and are posted. One is, at this point, it's informational, but I believe staff will be preparing for the next Finance and Operations Committee meeting an abstract. We had a report about the East Rock Sports Complex project, part of which encompasses the Wilbur Cross fields. And so I asked that it be included in your board packet. the information that was presented at some community meetings. Some money is coming into this from Connecticut Department of Education to help for improvements on the football field and the track and variety of other fields on the surrounding ones there that Cross uses, as well as the city. I think this is great news, especially because they're also been working closely with Eric Pachowski, our athletic director, to make sure that it's meeting the needs of the athletic programs, as well as all the other groups that the city folks and others are working on to make sure that it meets the needs of the community as well, since these are kind of shared spaces. So that's good news. It's informational at this time, but I invite everybody to take a look at the information that was posted. The second thing I would mention is that we're working through revamping the entire Series 3000 policies. We're looking at drafts of that, getting things ready to go to the governance committee and then to be considered by the board. So, but that work is continuing. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Wilcox. Any questions or comments? Governance report, Dr. Benitez.
Good evening, everybody. Yes, we had our meeting last week, and we had Mr. Wilcox visit with us and discuss the process that he's going to follow, and requested some support from Ms. Jackson on how to disseminate to the staff. What he has done is he has already looked at the Series 3000, made some edits, and now we would like staff who are involved with these specific series to look into what he did and perhaps make any recommendations. He's also been able to use the CAPE manual that we purchased in order to have a reference for those that series. In addition, I am going to be working with Ms. Jackson on series 5,000 and 6,000, just to do the same kind of process to make sure that we have all that the CAPE policy manual recommends. And then we will request the staff support as appropriate according to what the series calls for. Other than that, we are just asking that if anybody's working on policies, to please reach out. If you haven't received the CAPE policy manual, reach out to Ms. Jackson and she'll be able to support you with that. Also, if you have any questions, please give me a call. Not a problem for me to have a conversation with you if you are working on policies and are a little bit concerned about process or want any support from me in doing the work. One of the things I have to note, which I was very impressed both with Ms. Jackson's organization of the policies or her staff, they've created a chart that gives us an idea of what policies have been updated, what policies need to be updated. And so at some point, we will be able to provide the board a little bit more update on where we are with policies. In addition, Mr. Wilcox is using a similar format to keep track of what his team is doing in updating Series 3000, and he has offered to take on other series that are somewhat related to the committees that he serves on the board. And that's all for us right now.
Any questions or comments for Dr. Benitez? Thank you, Dr. Benitez. Food Service Task Group, Dr. Garfield.
Yes, thank you. The Food Service Task Group will have its next meeting in November, and we'll continue to work on policy work. So something that the committee started before I became a part, but to continue to use the CABE model as basis for comparison and update our model, our policy where appropriate, and the food gap subgroup team will continue to plan for upcoming breaks where our students may not have meals, but we want to supply meals. That's all.
Questions or comments for Dr. Yarborough? Seeing none. Thank you, Dr. Yarborough. Seeing none, I am going to make a motion that we go into executive session pursuant to Connecticut General Statutes 12006B and 1201B 9 and 10 regarding records, reports, and statements of strategy or negotiations with respect to the collective bargaining and records of communications privileged by the attorney-client privilege or relationship. And also executive session pursuant to Connecticut General Statutes 12006B and 1201B4 and 10, strategy and negotiations with respect to pending claims and discussion which would result in disclosure of attorney-client privilege communications. And I'm going to invite in Dr. Tracy, Attorney Alexiades, Attorney Sierra Milan, and Attorney Sarah Westby. And Ms. Connor emailed us the executive session link. Attorney Alexiades, did you have a question or clarification?
No, I was just
Okay.
going to you answer my question.
Okay, sounds good. Thank you. Is
Second.
there a second? Thank you. Any discussion? Okay, seeing none, we'll go into executive session. Mr. Goldson,
Yes.
Mr. Wilcox,
Yes.
Dr. Joyner,
Yes.
Dr. Benitez,
Yes.
Dr. Yarborough,
Yes.
Mr. Gahn, Mayor Elicker,
Yes.
and I'm a yes as well. Thank you. We're missing Dr. Benitez. Give her a few seconds to log on, if not, then we'll continue.
Missing?
Dr. Benitez. All right, so we are out of executive session, back in regular session. There were no votes in executive session, and so I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second,
Okay. Mr. Wilcox,
Yes.
Dr. Joyner,
yes.
Mr. Goldson,
Yes.
Dr. Yarborough,
Yes.
Mayor Elicker,
Yes.
and I am a yes as well. Good night, everyone. Thank you.
Good night, everybody.
Bye.
Take care.